This is just the beginning.
Welcome to this event, which will look at all the innovations surrounding 5G, how it's going to work in certain industries, and the future of 5G. I'd like to thank Verizon for making the conversations possible. Over the next 45 minutes, I'll be joined by a number of 5G experts, including two of the leading voices, Hans Vestberg, the CEO of Verizon, and Cristiano Amon, the president of Qualcomm. Today, we're introducing a new segment called Smarter, Faster, a rapid-fire Q&A with 5G experts who are using the technology in their fields. This segment should provide some insight into not only what 5G means broadly, but what they can do in these specific use cases, as well as some exciting things to look forward to in the future. First, I'd like to give you a quick sense of where we are right now. People are always asking, I hear a lot about 5G. What exactly is it? When is it coming? Let's see if we can help out a little. So first of all, some data that sort of helps set the scene. A recent survey showed that the majority of Americans actually underestimate the potential speed gains that one can get from 5G. And also that there's a bunch of concerns, things around cost, safety, and availability. So we're entering this new era at a time where we're hearing 5G a lot. A lot of people still don't know what it means, and especially what it means for them. So two factors go into how fast something feels. One is the pure speed, and there is a boost with 5G, and we'll talk a little bit about how that can differ. The other is something called latency. It's sort of the delay you have each time you try and get started. So if you have something really fast, but there's a big delay at the start, it's going to feel slower. So 5G offers the potential not only for faster speeds, but low latency or minimal delay. So this is how it works. Like past generations of cellular technology, signals travel through airwaves over a certain spectrum that's been allocated for that purpose. 5G is a little unique and it's using multiple different bands. So you have the low band spectrum, which is really good for covering a lot of distance. The speeds you get aren't that dramatically different from what you get with 4G LTE today. Then you have mid-band, which, like it sounds, is kind of in the middle, so travels less far than this low band, but at a higher speed. And then you have these ultra-high bands, so millimeter waves are sometimes called. These signals don't travel very far. They can be impeded by different things from weather to buildings and so forth. But when you get that signal, it can carry a ton of data, so you get the really fast speeds. And 5G can be going at one or all of these, and it can move between the different types of 5G or even back to 4G LTE as necessary. So 5G really has the potential to transform our society in a bunch of different ways. For example, you can have cars, whether they're self-driving or not, able to talk to one another. So a car that sees an accident ahead or brakes hard can send that signal in milliseconds to cars behind it, potentially saving lives. Remote operation of machinery, even remote surgery is certainly possible. And then another aspect of 5G that's really interesting is down the road, the ability for very low battery usage in certain settings. So let's say you wanted to monitor crops in a field. You don't want to have to change that device's battery or charge it every night like you do your phone. You could potentially have a sensor that sends very little data, but whose battery lasts 10 years. So 5G has a really wide range of uses. We're seeing it first in cell phones, but really the excitement around 5G is all the other ways that the technology can be used. A lot of people still don't know when 5G is coming. Survey shows that 35% of Americans really don't know when to expect 5G. Really, it's out there today for the earliest use, which is smartphones. Networks vary. Each network has different amount of the country covered with different types of 5G bandwidth. So basically, the future is here. It's just not evenly spread out, which is something that's common in technology. And what it's going to take for that to really become ubiquitous, especially high-speed ubiquitous, is really the whole industry continuing to work together as it has been. So that's everyone from the chip makers to the companies that make the network equipment to the people that provide cell service, all the way to the devices themselves need to have 5G support built in. The good news is many of the phones that have shipped this year, especially the high-end ones, and most of the phones that will ship over the next year are going to have 5G built in. So they'll be ready when the networks are. So bottom line, the impact is bigger than we think, but it will probably take a little bit longer than we think, which is often the case with technology. So let's bring in our first guest. For our first interview, we're joined by John Long, who is the CTO of Qwake Technologies, not Quake the video game, but a company that helps protect first responders. John, thanks for being with us. What do you guys do, and what does 5G change for the way that you guys do business?
Yeah, we have offering a visual communications platform to first responders, the goal of which is to enhance the perception of first responders by doing things like letting them see in the dark and see through smoke, and also using things like cellular technology like Verizon's 5G to increase group coordination and collective intelligence by allowing greater information sharing through high fidelity services like we're using right now, like video streaming, which is not being used in the first responder market.
And so put it into, terms that the average person can understand. What does 5G allow first responders to do that they wouldn't have been, that your company couldn't do before 5G? What gets done better and what couldn't be done at all?
Yeah, the most obvious one is scale, right? For right now with our technology on 4G LTE, if there was a house or a small office that was burning that would have, say, a couple fire teams come out, 10 to 15 firefighters, LTE would be sufficient for that. But if there were ever a much larger fire as do occur, or in the event of domestic terrorism attack, something large, or a natural event, where you have 50, 100 firefighters, several hundred, that's where you really need, the most obvious case for 5G there is you need that scale. You won't have that bandwidth for a small number of people.
And sadly, this isn't a theoretical discussion. I mean, communication was a huge challenge on 9/11. The firefighters literally and the police literally couldn't talk to each other. How big an impact do you think widespread availability of technology like yours could make for the future?
I think quite a large one, actually, because frankly, it can augment what's already there. Currently, they use push-to-talk radios. We've all seen those ones. So actually adding another frequency band through cellular, and also another communication mode. Unlike push-to-talk radios, which were all audition sound communication, ours is all visual. It's all icon-based. It's all embedded in their training. It's all visual. So it can only be additive insofar as we don't overwhelm the user.
And what's the time frame? Is this something that's going to happen, tomorrow? Is it going to take time to roll out? Where are we in the process?
Well, I'm very excited to say that we just finished a commercial pilot with the Boston Fire Department in collaboration with Verizon. That was where we were able to test the validity of our visual communications platform. We still have some more work to do on the software side, and there's a lot of work you have to do before you can sell a product in the fire space. But we're hoping to, in 2021, be out there. So stay tuned.
And with 5G, is that something where there has to be high-speed 5G service in the neighborhood where the fire is happening? Or do they bring, if you will, the 5G connectivity with them when they bring their other equipment?
It depends on the nature of the emergency. If it was a house fire or an office fire, something that wouldn't bring in, say, Verizon's rapid response team, then you would be relying upon cellular within the locality where the emergency is taking place. But in the event of a natural disaster or something very large scale, Verizon has utilities and infrastructure that it can bring out.
So it's the kind of thing where it sort of depends, but basically your efforts, the kinds of things you're doing will benefit from when 5G is more widely deployed.
Definitely. That's why we always make sure, just as your cell phones now have a radio that is both 4G and 3G, our system has a radio that will be, not just 4G, but 5G. So we can use whatever network architecture is there, including 802.11 AC wireless. So we're trying to be able to use whatever signals might be available at that time.
And obviously, Wi-Fi is a nice option when you have it, but if you have a fire, you might well not have Wi-Fi. Well, I really appreciate it. John Long is the CTO of Qwake Technologies. Thank you, John.
Thank you for your interest.
Next, I'm joined by Marianne Baldwin, the mayor of Raleigh, North Carolina. Mayor Baldwin, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to me how you think about 5G in terms of what the potential is for your city and how you're thinking more broadly about how to use technology to make Raleigh smarter.
Well, I was one of the co-founders of an organization called Innovate Raleigh. This was 9 years ago. And part of our goal was to really embrace innovation and entrepreneurship to better our community. So this is one of the ways that we feel really strongly that we can advance some of the things we want to do. So I'll give you an example. We have held the Triangle Smart City Conference, And this, when you think about 5G, it will really enable the Internet of Things and help our city better serve its residents. If we can use like interconnected devices that give faster, more reliable data, then we can come back and talk about issues like climate change and the impacts on, say, pollution and wind and rain. We can also identify parking and traffic congestion and offer real-time solutions. That is, once people are back to work. But right now, these are the things that we could do just to, ensure that our public data is more robust. Pedestrian crashes is another area where I can see us really using some of these tools to improve quality of life.
And we hear a lot about this notion of smart cities that you've talked about. The parking example you gave is certainly one concrete example, but what does it really mean to you? What are the types of things you don't think you could have done before 5G that you think will be possible with this new generation of cellular technology? And as you mentioned, one that can power not just phones and tablets, but all manner of smart devices.
People are talking about the way that it can impact medicine and research and technology. So, aside from, being a quicker network, it really has the opportunity to, say, improve autonomous vehicle mobility, telemedicine. We're a big gaming community with Epic Games located here. So gaming and esports, those could be some true growth areas for us in the future with 5G connectivity. But, one of the things that I think is also really important is that this technology can be used and should be used to also advance some of our most vulnerable communities. It is being located in areas that are, we've seen with COVID, are suffering from a lack of connectivity and access to broadband. And 3 of these areas will be positively impacted by the type of technology that Verizon is looking to install.
And we only have about 30 seconds, but I'm curious how much of an investment it is up front for the city. Is it the kind of thing where you guys are putting money that might have been spent elsewhere into 5G because of what you think it can deliver?
No, where we really had to make an investment is in our processes and systems. We had a very difficult approval process that we changed and basically streamlined to make it easier for companies to install 5G. That was one of the things standing in our way. So what we've tried to do is really support this from a process standpoint, from a system standpoint, simplifying the things that we needed to do to make it easier for 5G, Verizon and others who want to install 5G to do so.
Mayor Baldwin, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Ina.
Our last segment is with Iskander Rakhman, who is the CEO of ORBI. Thanks for joining. Your company makes wearable multi-camera systems. Explain a little what that means and how 5G plays into it.
Thank you, Ina. We've embedded 8K cameras into football helmets. And as a result, the football helmets are capable of streaming live 360-degree 8K footage from the player's perspective directly to the production team, to the broadcasters. In a nutshell, the product leverages the power of AI to process massive amounts of live 360-degree footage from football helmets and augments regular 2D format broadcasting with immersive experience. It makes live streaming. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the reason you need 5G is if you're going to have one of these cameras, let alone many of them running around the football field, you want both the high bandwidth and the minimal delay that come with 5G, right?
That's exactly right. It makes live streaming NFL games from the player's perspective the most feasible and effective commercial application of consumer 5G today.
And we've seen some early efforts at sort of bringing that 360 experience to broadcast TV. Is the main hurdle here the connectivity? Does 5G do it? Or is it a combination of getting 5G plus better camera technology plus the AI to choose between these different angles?
I believe it's the convergence of the 5G technology with the higher fidelity camera systems, as well as the development of specific neural nets for improving image quality and finding the most engaging footage at any given moment.
And I was just watching a game on TV over the weekend that I'd recorded. What is the time frame for this? Obviously, they didn't have that technology this weekend. They're not going to have it next weekend. What's the timing for when we might see this in broadcasts that we would see?
Earlier this year, we had multiple negotiations with Comcast to run a pilot via its daughter NBC Universal company this year. However, due to the pandemic, those plans get put on hold, and we plan on renewing the pilots earlier in 2021.
Sounds good. And how important do you think 5G will be overall to the sports and entertainment industry? How much do you think it'll change the types of broadcasts we're able to see?
5G is going to be essential for bringing new types of experience to increase engagement among the fans of various ages. So in our specific example, we bring in a console game-like experience for the viewers that was not possible and would not be possible without 5G.
And really quick, we just have about 30 seconds left, but how much do you have to work with other companies? How much is this a joint effort of different technology companies to bring something like this to bear?
We're using various partners and vendors. Those include the Telit that works directly with Qualcomm chips. That includes telecom operators. That includes broadcasters and network providers. It's a common mutual effort that will bring this new experience to life.
Well, thank you so much, Iskander. That concludes our Smarter, Faster segment that hopefully gives some insight into how 5G is enabling different specific industries. Our next segment will feature the perspective of someone who knows a lot about 5G and, quite frankly, about the Gs that came before that. Cristiano Amon is the president of Qualcomm and is joining us from San Diego. Welcome, Cristiano.
Very happy to be here. Good to see you, Ina, and happy to be participating at this forum.
So I was going to ask where 5G is at from your perspective, but your T-shirt kind of answers that. But what does that actually mean, 5G is here? For whom and to do what is 5G here?
Well, 5G is definitely here, and it's alive and well, and it's becoming bigger and bigger, and will be, a big part of our lives as we live in a connected society. Breaking that question down, what we see now, we have 95 operators. We just updated that number. They had commercialized 5G globally. There's over 300 operators investing in 5G so they can launch. I'll say the device ecosystem already switched to 5G. We're seeing one of the fastest transitions in all of the Gs in wireless technology. And this one is going to be very transformative because it's going to connect everything to the cloud 100% of the time. And with that, we're going to see a big change in services of already mature smartphone society.
And a lot of 5G is what can happen down the road in terms of other types of devices connecting to the internet, ultra low latency. What does it mean right now? If I have a 5G device, and a lot of the phones being sold this year are 5G, they have your chips inside. A lot of those are 5G. There's networks out there. What does that really mean to me as a consumer today?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack that, and I'll focus on the consumer because there's a lot of other things happening with 5G as well. But just focus on the question on the consumer, and I will kind of build a crescendo. So the very first one, and probably not what you would expect, is the best phone you can buy today will be a 5G phone. So if you're looking at the latest and greatest phone with not only the greatest connectivity, but the latest application processor, camera, multimedia, speed, the device ecosystem switch. So if the best phone you can buy now is a 5G phone. But then what are you going to do with that 5G? Your question. And we're already starting to see a crescendo of features and capabilities that are changing. The very first one is how we consume and generate video. 5G will do to video what 4G did to music, to the point that today, I don't think, except very few individuals, we don't have CDs anymore. We don't listen to CDs in our cars. We stream music everywhere. And that's going to happen with high resolution video. 95% of the time with 5G, you're going to be able to consume video in the highest possible resolution was made. And it's going to turn each and every one of us in a broadcaster, because you have now the ability to send instantly to the cloud much higher resolution videos. The other thing that you're going to see, and it's video conferencing improvement. This one is particularly interesting for me, that had an opportunity to be in all the different G transitions, as you pointed out. We've been talking about video conference for a very long time. It used to be one of the promises of 3G. The pandemic made it clear to everyone what video conference really is. If I just had called you right now, and we were talking on the phone without video, will probably not be as good of an experience as we're having now. And I think that's how it's the new expectation for interactions. That is going to be much better with 5G, especially because of the latency. And it's just a service that people are using right now on your phone. We're going to see then from there an upgrade in social. It's as you would expect. The low latency provide a lot more ability for you to have real-time content sharing and broadcasting other than still images. And we're going to see this evolution that's go along with social networks into social or virtual presence. And then things that were not part of the phone, you're ready to see glimpses of that happening right now. You see some early, this year is going to be pervasive in 21, which is mobile gaming, with streaming using 5G, streaming of main titles to your mobile device. So your mobile device, you'll be able to play gaming titles like you would see in consoles. And that's just of some of the services that are happening right now, which is an improvement or kind of bring more capabilities to the smartphone. There's a lot of services yet to be invented. And I'll end this answer to you by talking about something else that you're going to see, what is called on-demand computing. 5G will democratize computing. You don't have to have a PC or workstation because you can run things on the cloud. And productivity will see a step function of things that you can do on your phone. You'll be able to do more with 5G. And you're going to see that, now you're going to see that in 2021 as you have an order of magnitude increase in the type of productivity applications you can do on your phone, especially if you're not in the office.
Well, and I definitely want to talk about computing in a second. Before we leave phones, one of the things that you have as a unique perspective as Qualcomm is you guys make the chips that are in most of this next generation of phones, always at the cutting edge. And I'm curious, in your conversations, what are the kinds of things that your customers are saying they want in their next phones for 2021, 2022? In the next year or two, what are the kinds of things that our phones will be able to do with 5G that they weren't capable of doing before? And you talked about one of them, gaming, which is obviously a big deal for a lot of people. The ability, there's these new PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and you'll be able to play those same kinds of games on your phones. What else will you be able to do in the phones that are coming out over the next year or two?
So it's a very good question. Look, we do have now line of sight to, a lot of the phones have been designed with not only existing Snapdragon, but some of the future generation ones. I think we updated during our earnings call our design pipeline of 5G designs in excess of 700. And what we see is significantly improvement, a request for more capabilities in artificial intelligence processing on devices. Because as you have the high-speed connectivity on 5G and the ability to communicate with the cloud 100% of the time, you also bring the possibility of doing a lot of machine learning. An example, it's a feature that we demonstrated, and we see a lot of progress with that. An example of that is real-time translation. You can have a conversation in real time and get that translated to you from a different language. Or like putting subtitles in videos or other content that you're consuming. You have the processing capabilities and the machine learning engines to do that. Continue to see improvements in camera and adding more machine learning to camera about computer vision and video processing. We talk about gaming, that's driving higher GPU, even higher quality displays. And, it's early to say, but we're starting to see signs of form factor changing. I think Samsung just launched the second generation Fold, and screens are going to get bigger. I think there are kind of interesting designs out there, which are going to make use of this technology as you're going to have, more capabilities in your device.
And you mentioned computing earlier. Qualcomm for years has been investing in wireless capable laptops. It hasn't actually become a huge business. Every time it seems like it might, really we've kind of stuck with Wi-Fi only on our laptops. Do you think 5G will change that? And if so, why?
It's a very good question. There is one. We always believe in that trend. We always believe in that. Computers we should be connected 100% of the time, and we have been investing in technology. It's becoming better every year. We see now great devices like the Surface Pro X from Microsoft. But there's one thing that happened, and it happened during the pandemic. There is something we call the enterprise transformation of the home. And the enterprise transformation of the home basically kind of brought the office into the home as people are going to work remotely. And a couple things now became a requirement for PCs. I'm going to list them to you. Number one is the PC, needs to be connected. If you don't have good broadband, you need connectivity. And some of the home internet, in some cases, is asymmetric. You have fast downlink, not very fast uplink. But what we're doing right now, we're just streaming video. So that connectivity become important. How you separate enterprise data from education and entertainment data, how enterprises will deal with SSID and passwords versus being extended to the network. So connectivity become important. Camera become very important. Camera was not a feature that people care about in the PCs. But if you look at the technology we've been developing for phones over the years, I would say camera technology developed on the phone more than any other device. Now you bring that capability of a flagship camera to a PC, it's a game changing for this type of application. Audio and multimedia become extremely important. And the last one, you can't use it for entertainment. Streaming of gaming and streaming of video. So with long battery life. So the pandemic may have accelerated the transformation of the PCs, and that's going to be a good opportunity for Qualcomm.
So we only have about a minute left. I'm curious, we've talked about phones and we've talked about laptops. When do some of these other kinds of devices, whether it's, remote surgery, remote robotics, all the things that everyone uses to whet our appetite, when do those become real? Is that still a few years off?
I don't think so. I'll say some in large scale, probably we're going to start to see scale in 2021, maybe a year, and very broad deployment, maybe 2 years out. But there's a lot of active engagements today. I'll just name a few. I know we don't have time. We're working with a very large utility company doing a digital twin of the power grid, doing 5G connected substations, and the use case about how you deal now with renewable energy and consumers generating their own energy. You have multi-flow. You have to react in real time. We're working with companies in Europe and in Germany and Japan to do advanced manufacturing about connecting robots via 5G. We have some prototypes right now, and smart cities is another area that we see a lot of potential. So it is happening, and it's going to get scale as 5G gets scale.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much. Cristiano Amon is the president of Qualcomm. Thanks, Cristiano.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Our next guest is the CEO of Verizon, Hans Vestberg, joining us from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Hans, thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to be here,
You've been in the networking business for a long time. Before you were CEO of Ericsson and now for several years as CEO of Verizon. Why is 5G different than, if you will, the other Gs that came before it?
I think if you go back to the design principles of 5G, the design principles of 2G to 4G was basically two capabilities. That was speed and throughput. We took our 2G phone that we loved and cared, we spoke on it and we sent text messages, and we got to a 4G phone that basically could do live streaming and still speak on it. When we think about 5G, the design principle was actually we need to do even more. We need to transform industries. We need to transform society by using wireless connectivity at the edge of the network. So that was the idea. And from that idea, basically it came out 8 capabilities that is needed, not only the speed and the throughput, but several others that are, some of them only, I would say, for industries, but in many cases, consumers will enjoy them as well. So that's the big difference that is going to transform industries and businesses, but it's going to be a lot of great opportunities for consumers as well, because consumers always find ways to innovate on new types of capabilities on the wireless technologies.
So as you point out, we've been promised a lot with 5G. It's not just, how fast you can get stuff on your phone. It's low latency for a lot of things, so very minimal delay. And then it's also, in some uses, very low battery life, so you can have sensors and stuff that are out in the field that last for 10 years. That's what we've been talking about for a long time. That's the promise. Where are we now, and how do we get there? What are the steps that we'll need to take before we're doing things beyond using 5G for our phones?
So first of all, I have to say that we're ahead of the game, because ultimately, when 5G was starting to be developed as a standard, the thought was that the first stumbling steps would be in 2020. Right now, in 2020, we have a fully fledged network on 5G nationwide. We have our ultra-wideband. There are phones all the way from Samsung, LG, and Apple 5G phones. So the whole ecosystem has speeded up where we are today. So we are in a situation where actually 5G is getting real. And the reason is, of course, that the largest ecosystem players has all now developed 5G applications, products, and systems. That's where we are today. So from here on, you're going to see so much more about 5G than you ever thought about. Of course, when you start with the technology, you always talk what the technology should do. There's no difference what 4G did. There was a lot of buzz on 4G before it started the rollout as well. But now I think if we look at Verizon, we have all those components for 5G right now, what we think are important. We have the network, we have the capabilities of the network, and we have the devices that we're doing, that we're coming out with together with our partners. So that's why 5G is getting real right now. And now consumers, enterprises, and society at large can actually see the impact and benefits from it. But remember, every technology cycle we have is roughly 10 years in the wireless. And of course, it's not like what we're getting right now is the end state. If somebody would remember how 4G looked like the day one it came out and how it looks today, it's a tremendous development, what you can do with it, the performance, the capabilities. The same will happen in 5G, but it's just a step change compared to 4G.
And what will some of the first non-phone uses be? Right now, I'm looking at my phone and, sometimes it says 5G, sometimes it doesn't. There was a little hype from one of your competitors and it said 5GE. I'm not noticing a ton of difference. I mean, as you point out, there is nationwide 5G. You guys recently announced your plans. T-Mobile and AT&T have had it out for a while. But the nationwide 5G, we're talking low band. The speeds aren't that different than what I get on a 4G phone, maybe a little bit faster, but not this step function change. Then you have what you guys are doing in ultra wideband.
And that's what you need to think about. That was the same with 4G when it came in the beginning as well. Fairly similar to 3G. You start with one band, you start to aggregating, using more, and of course the nationwide will ultimately be far better than the 4G. Right now, equal a little bit better. But what we have done, which you're mentioning, is of course the ultra wideband. The 5G ultra wideband is on a high spectrum, millimeter wave spectrum, and can do things that no other wireless technology has even been close to. We build that where people live, or where they play, or where they work, where the majority of all capacities, where there's a density of capacity, where there's a density of devices. That's really when you have an experience layer called ultra wideband. I mean, already today you can run around with a 5G phone in ultra wideband, and you have 2 gig, up to 4 gigabits per second in speed on the phone, which is compared to our best 4G network in the nation on 100 megabits. So you can even compare it. Both the uplink and the downlink is so much better. So clearly, that is how we built it. So we built it for an experience layer where people are really using the network. So that's very different. But over time, the nationwide, as you mentioned, that will evolve as well on other spectrum of spectrum combinations and things like that, which ultimately is improving the capabilities on 5G. So that's what we're seeing right now. And we are very excited of what we can do with it. And some of the use cases, of course, that we see is that the low latency is going into things that need to connect very quickly. It can be robotics, robots that are actually going to be steered by 5G instead of being by a cable or a Wi-Fi. This is going to be far superior. We already have those use cases ongoing. It can also be things like drones that are going to be controlled by the 5G network, because we can control so many devices at the same time, which the normal satellites cannot control, because there are very few aircrafts in the air. It's going to be thousands of drones in there at the same time, and it can only be controlled by the mobile network. So these things people are not realizing will change our day-to-day, because the transformation of those industries by using 5G is quite dramatic.
And when do you think we get some of those things? There's kind of use cases right now being tested. Is that where we're at? So that some of these things are being trialed?
I think we're beyond the trials. We're beyond the sort of doing trials. We know this is working. Remember, many of the use cases are sort of private 5G networks that we're building for a confined area, for a store, or for a big warehouse where you're going to control all the robotics. That we are already working with many of the enterprises today. And that's sort of the hidden thing about 5G, because everyone thinks about 5G. They think about the phone and they think about 4G and consumer. Again, 5G has capabilities that are far beyond being only for consumers. I mean, just the idea that on 5G, I can connect 1 million devices per square kilometer. Everybody understands there's never going to be 1 million people on a 1 square kilometer, but there's going to be 1 million devices that are organized in order to do things at the same time. In 4G, I can do at best 100,000. And that's sort of a big stadium or something like that, that you can have concurrent users. So all these things, these capabilities of 5G are also thinking about transformation of industries.
And you were on stage at the Apple event. Obviously, it's a big deal. As you mentioned, now all the players have 5G devices out there. And obviously, Apple being there is a big part of that. Is that just about getting the ecosystem together? Or are you and Apple doing something more than just the typical carrier device maker handshake?
I think that we have been working with sort of the best and the brightest in our industry when it comes to the 5G ecosystem. We were very early on working with our infrastructure providers, seeing that we were part of their R&D, developing equipment for millimeter wave, for example. We worked with the chipset manufacturers so that our customers are getting the right type of chipset in the phones in order for them to enjoy the full capacity of 5G. And of course, that's also where Apple plays in. We have worked with them for quite a long time, both technology-wise, commercially, go-to-market. We had joint marketing together with them in this case. So this is a way for us to work with the best of the breed to see that our customers is going to enjoy the best of Verizon and the best of our network. So yeah, it's more than a normal relationship like it is with many of other ecosystem players that we have developed this with. And as I said, I mean, we are probably 2 years ahead of any plans that we outlined from the beginning, because we've worked with this ecosystem players to see that they are up to speed and have volumes and scale.
So what's next? When we look, if we were to talk a year from now, what is going to be different? We have phones, we have networks. What's going to be different over the next year? Is it just going to be more places? Is it going to be more types of devices? What's going to happen in the short term?
I think in the short term, we're going to see our network broadening out, especially the nationwide, but also I would say our ultra-wide will grow. Then you're going to see use cases coming out. I mean, now the ecosystem is out there, both the Android ecosystem and the iOS system. Yeah, now we can start doing development on an application. On top of that, of course, we now have, by year end, we're going to have 10 mobile edge compute centers with Amazon, where you basically, as a developer, can start developing straight on in the network. So you can do that, and then their devices. So I envision the next 12 months, we're going to see a lot of innovation on 5G applications, solutions that are going to use these capabilities that is unparalleled to any other wireless technology we have ever had. So that's what I envision the next 12 months, and then it will go on from there on. But clearly, next month is going to be more exciting than these 12 months, because the 12 months in 2020 has been a lot about building the network, seeing the ecosystem is there. Now all players are there. All the pieces of the ecosystem is ready. So this is going to be exciting for our consumers, for our enterprise customers, for our small and medium customers, for our IoT customers, and all of them can start enjoying it.
Well, a lot, obviously, to look forward to. Hopefully, the next time we have this conversation, we'll also be able to do it in person. Hans Vestberg, CEO of Verizon, thank you so much. Well, thank you all for joining for another conversation that I hope made us all a little bit smarter, faster on 5G. Before we go, there's a couple points that really stuck with me. One was Cristiano Amon saying that we're really going to see with 5G what we saw for video, what we saw with 4G for music. And at first I was a little skeptical, because you can watch video on 4G. But what I think is really important is the mindset shifts. So we still think about how much video we're using. We don't really think about when we're streaming audio. And I think the point is that's where we'll be with 5G. You won't really worry about whether it's downloaded on your device. You'll just stream whatever you want when you want it. And that will be a shift, especially for cell phones. The other thing that struck me was when Hans was talking about the leap to 4G to 5G, 5G having capabilities that are well beyond just what you need for consumers. If this were just about our cell phone, we might not even need 5G, but it's so much more than that. One of the things it allows, as Hans was saying, is way more connections. And if this were about cell phones, you wouldn't need way more. So if you can support 100,000 connections in a location, that allows everyone in a football stadium, when we're allowed to go to football stadiums again, to have a cell signal. But when you want technology built into every seat, when you want dozens of them inside the cameras, inside the helmets, all this stuff, then suddenly you need much more density. And that's what 5G is capable of bringing about. So I'd like to thank Verizon for making this conversation possible. You can sign up for my newsletter, Login, and all of Axios' newsletters at getlogin.axios.com. And finally, I just want to say we also have a smart course around 5G. It's the first of our sort of primers, if you will, where the Axios staff explains the subject, and we dive into some of the issues we talked about, but a bunch more, including how China plays into all this, the global race for 5G, and as always, why it matters to you. So thank you all for joining, and we'll see you soon at Axios.com.